This is Dr. John Tolson, and you're listening to the Disciple Making Podcast. Jesus' strategy to change the planet is found in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, when he says, "Go therefore into all the world and make disciples." One of the most misunderstood verses in the Bible is Matthew 28, verse 19. We've been laboring the last several months on trying to unpack and explain what it means to make disciples. There is no greater strategy on the planet to change the planet than Matthew 28, verse 19, and yet so few churches, so few ministries are engaged in that process. And I hope if you're listening to this and you think that's a little too harsh, it will get your attention and you'll pass it along to your pastor, to a ministry leader, whatever they are, whatever they do. This is a strategy to change the planet, and it works, but it's untried. So last week we talked about expectations. Once you pick your disciple, what are the expectations that you have of those you're discipling? Today we're going to talk about the meeting format. So when you meet together for an hour, hour and 15 minutes, or perhaps you might even go through this on the telephone or Skyping. Some people do that are not in the same locale. But let me just give you a few timely tips on this. Number one, meet one-on-one or one-on-two. I believe if you meet 1-on-3, 1-on-4, 1-on-5, 1-on-6, you're not going to have the same impact and result as if you meet 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 weekly. Most experts say that the most you should meet with in the discipling process is 1-on-2. In other words, a triad. I prefer 1-on-1, and that's kind of the way I go. But meet 1-on-1. Secondly, men ought to be meeting with men, and women ought to be meeting with women, or couples meeting together. I hope the reasons for that are obvious. Number three, so what do you do when you meet for that hour, an hour and 15 minutes? Let me give you a few things, and you might want to jot these down. First of all, when we sit down in the room, I usually spend a few minutes and let's catch up. What's going on? What you been up to? How's your family? Etc. And then we'll have a brief prayer. And then I'll say, all right, let's share some of the observations that we had in our study of the chapter in the 4 priorities. And so we'll go back and forth in that for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and dig in deeply and try to apply that to our lives. Then we'll talk about sharing our schedules. All right, what's your schedule in the next week or two? And I'll make notes on the other person's schedule and key things that I can remember and pray about for that person. And they'll do the same for me. Then I'll say, share your briefly your relationships. What's going on at home? What's going on with your wife, your kids, people at work, etc. Maybe especially in light of things that you want to pray about. Then share briefly where you are right now. What are some of your stress points? What are some of your concerns? So we'll talk about that for a few minutes. And then we close in prayer. And as we pray, again, what we're trying to do here is to pray about things that we've talked about in the course of our hour or hour and 15 minutes together. Now let me just add one thing here. That if an issue comes up sometime during the meeting that's really on the heart of the person I'm discipling, then I won't insist that we make sure we get through the rest of this chapter. We may not even look at the chapter. We may really hone in on what that person's going through and then get back to the chapter the next time. So please be sensitive to that. Number 4, if there are questions that are raised that you as the disciple maker can't answer, simply say, I don't know. I'll come back next week with an answer. That's how we learn as disciple makers, by being asked those questions, going out and digging out the answer and coming back and sharing it. And then finally, this is a highly relational process, this disciple making. So I would say to you, be a good friend as a disciple maker. You think about that. Thanks for listening to the Disciple Making Podcast. Check out our website at thetolsongroup.com and sign up for my weekly encouraging videos called Red Glasses Talks to come to your email every Monday morning. You can also find me at Dr. John Tolson on social media. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me a review and share with a friend.